Marriage is often presented to men as the crowning achievement of adult life, a sacred, lifelong partnership built on the foundations of love, loyalty, and mutual respect. From childhood, the cultural narrative paints marriage as the reward for being a good man, who works hard, treats women well, and dreams of building a family. In this narrative, the bride's smile symbolizes unconditional devotion, and the vows promise a bond unbreakable by time or trouble. But beneath the romantic gloss lies a contractual reality sanctioned and enforced by the state. Signing a marriage certificate is not just a declaration of love, it is the acceptance of legal terms that can, under certain conditions, strip one party of wealth, freedom, and even access to their children. Men often enter marriage believing they are safeguarding the woman they love, unaware they are also binding themselves to a framework that can punish them if the relationship ends. The language of forever disguises a far colder truth: marriage is structured as a transaction. Emotional connection, though present at first, is not the legally enforceable part, the financial obligations are. In effect, the man becomes the primary asset, his earnings and future potential tied to obligations that remain even after the marriage dissolves. While the woman gains security through legal backing, the man assumes a form of risk that extends far beyond emotional vulnerability. The romance may be genuine in the early years, but the system underpinning marriage treats the relationship like a contract in which one party's obligations can vastly outweigh the other's. For many men, the painful realization of this imbalance arrives only when the marriage begins to crack, and the machinery of law grinds into motion. Marriage stands apart from all other legal agreements because it carries an embedded paradox: the person who chooses to end it may walk away with the greatest financial and custodial advantages. For men, this creates a precarious situation where the decision to leave is not merely emotional for their spouse, it can be incentivized by the structure of divorce laws. If a wife chooses to leave, the legal system often grants her substantial portions of the man's assets, continued financial support through alimony, and, in many cases, primary custody of children. These outcomes are not dictated by moral judgment about either spouse's behavior but by default legal precedents that consistently favor one side. The court seldom weighs the man's years of financial provision, emotional investment, or sacrifices made to uphold the marriage. Instead, the dissolution becomes a redistribution of his resources under state order. For some men, this process dismantles not just their finances but their sense of self, as their role shifts from partner to provider under compulsion. He may find himself paying for the upkeep of a household he no longer inhabits, funding a lifestyle for someone who has chosen to leave, and losing daily contact with his children. Unlike in business contracts where breach by one party results in reparations to the other, in marriage, the man can face penalties even when he is one left behind. The legal trap is that he cannot negotiate these terms after the fact; they are predetermined and legally binding from the moment he signed. Before marriage, both partners are typically motivated to sustain attraction and effort. Dating thrives on mutual desire, shared responsibility, and a degree of uncertainty that keeps each person striving to impress and invest in the relationship. But once vows are exchanged and the relationship gains legal permanence, the psychological dynamic often shifts, particularly for the woman. The certainty of marital security, bolstered by law, can lessen her need to maintain the same level of emotional, physical, or interpersonal effort. For the man, however, the list of obligations often grows heavier: primary financial provider, physical protector, emotional supporter, and, in many cases, default fixer of all logistical and household issues. Over time, he may feel that the balance has tipped from partnership to servitude. Without the mutual drive of the pre-marriage stage, resentment can emerge. From her perspective, the relationship is secure regardless of whether effort matches the early years; from his, the stakes remain high, but his leverage to demand reciprocity erodes. This change is not always sudden; it can creep in gradually, becoming noticeable only when dissatisfaction has taken root. The sense of entrapment stems from knowing that leaving is not just an emotional decision but a financial gamble with potentially devastating consequences, while staying may mean enduring a partnership that no longer feels equitable. The economic foundation of many marriages is built on the man's consistent provision. He often finances the home, pays the majority of bills, covers children's education and daily needs, and maintains the family's lifestyle. In theory, marriage should acknowledge and respect this contribution as part of a shared venture. But in divorce, courts frequently treat these assets as joint property to be divided, regardless of the proportional input. Even after separation, a man may be legally required to continue supporting his ex-wife through alimony, sometimes for years or even decades, in addition to mandated child support. This can create a scenario where his standard of living declines sharply while hers remains stable, or even improves, because the legal system prioritizes maintaining her lifestyle. The years of labor he invested in building security for his family can vanish in the course of a few legal proceedings. The injustice many men feel is compounded by societal attitudes that glorify their sacrifices during marriage but erase their hardship after it ends. He is told he was the rock of the family, but once divorced, he is often portrayed as the problem or as having failed in his duties. The financial quicksand is that he may work harder after divorce than ever before, but instead of building a future for himself, his labor maintains a structure he no longer benefits from. Perhaps the most emotionally devastating blow comes in the realm of fatherhood. In many jurisdictions, the default custody arrangement grants primary care to the mother, relegating the father to visitation rights that may amount to just a few days each month. For men who have been deeply involved in their children's lives, this shift can be shattering. The court's decisions are often justified under the banner of the child's best interest, but in practice, these rulings disproportionately limit paternal involvement. Child support payments become another compulsory outflow, calculated without necessarily reflecting actual parenting time or expenses. Beyond the financial strain lies the deeper emotional wound, being cut off from the daily rhythms of his children's lives, missing milestones, and feeling his role reduced to that of a part-time presence. The system effectively uses his devotion to his children as leverage. He will comply with financial orders because the alternative might be losing even the limited access he is granted. For many men, this loss of fatherhood is far more painful than any financial penalty. It strikes at identity, legacy, and the irreplaceable bond between parent and child. From a young age, boys are taught a script about manhood: a real man marries, provides unwaveringly, and sacrifices his own needs for those of his family. This narrative is reinforced in media, religion, and tradition, often positioning women as vulnerable figures in need of protection and men as stoic pillars who bear the load. When a marriage collapses, society tends to frame the woman's departure as courageous or empowering, while the man's situation is viewed through a lens of blame or personal failure. He must have done something wrong, becomes the assumption, regardless of the facts. This cultural bias adds a layer of shame to the material losses men experience. They are not only stripped of assets and access to their children but are also denied social sympathy. In effect, the societal script ensures that even in victimhood, a man is denied recognition, he is expected to endure in silence. The combination of legal disadvantage and cultural condemnation creates an environment where men internalize their struggles, further entrenching the cycle of harm. The early stages of many relationships involve a kind of performance from both parties, each presenting their most attractive qualities. Women, like men, may highlight traits, kindness, sexual openness, shared interests, that foster bonding and attraction. However, some men report that post-marriage, once the relationship is legally secured, the drive to maintain these qualities wanes. The comfort and certainty of the marital contract can lead to shifts in behavior. Effort in intimacy, communication, or shared activities may decline, and disagreements can become more frequent. For men who feel blindsided by these changes, divorce statistics offer a sobering context: roughly half of marriages fail, and in a significant proportion of those cases, women initiate the separation. The consequences often leave men starting over with diminished resources and few support systems. While she may be celebrated for embracing a new chapter, he is left to rebuild quietly, navigating both emotional and material recovery without public acknowledgement of his loss. For men who have seen through the system and recognized its inherent risks, the path forward often involves rejecting the conventional script altogether. They choose not to bind themselves with a contract that trades their independence for potential legal subjugation. This doesn't mean they reject love, companionship, or family, it means they seek these without entangling themselves in a framework that could turn against them. They may cohabit without marrying, use legal tools to protect assets, or become fathers under arrangements that safeguard their rights. In prioritizing autonomy, they reclaim not just financial security but also the ability to walk away from unhealthy situations without catastrophic loss. Ironically, this freedom can make them more attractive partners. A man who engages in a relationship by choice rather than obligation often commands greater respect. In this view, true empowerment lies in understanding the rules of the game and deciding not to play when the odds are structurally stacked against you.